So I want to go into well, good morning, first of all, good morning. I have your Zendo and the garden pictured in my mind, and I have you in my heart. Teijo and I have known each other since we were very young. So after she stopped being a nun in training in the Catholic Church, and started practicing with Katagiri Roshi in 1982.
We met at Tassajara in 83, but
83.
I met Katagiri Roshi in San Francisco in 1975.
Yeah, so that's about when I met him too. So Katagiri Roshi was one of my practice teachers. And so when it wasn't just Teijo's kind of sense of humor and kindness that made us be friends, but also that we shared a teacher, her root teacher and my practice teacher. And and then after I left Tassajara, after the problems at San Francisco Zen Center, when Katagiri Roshi came for a year to be acting abbot so that we could have leadership, I came to MZMC one April about 40 something years ago.
You have to tell them what MZMC means.
Minnesota Zen Meditation Center, where Teijo was training. And when I came, it was called Lake Calhoun there. And it's no longer called Lake Calhoun, but that's what it was called. And when I came, it was iced over and snowy. And I stayed there for several days. And by the time I left, daffodils were blooming and people had their shirts off. And so this is something, I asked somebody about this and they said, well, you know, in Minnesota, we have about 10 days of good weather a year. And, but the transition from one season to another and from being iced over to new life was palpable and moving. So it was an amazing thing to witness. And so the mountain seed ceremony is something like that, except it's not an act of nature. It's an act of a Sangha to see their teacher in a new way. But it's also an act of the Sangha to see itself in a new way. So this is, I only got to see Kotoku's lecture. I was trying to figure out what lectures you did. So I only got to see Kotoku, but this is something that he was emphasizing in his lecture, where he said that the mountain seat ceremony is a ceremony by the Sangha for the development of the Sangha, as well as the acknowledgement of the teacher. Okay, so what does this mean? You know, so the teacher has a script to follow in this ceremony. And the script can change depending on what the place is and what level of formality, what the aesthetic choices of the Sangha are. And I want to emphasize that ceremonial practice unites us kind of metaphorically and artistically with the entire universe. That we don't normally see or understand this, but the way the Zendo is made, the way the bowing mats are made, the way the robes are made, is a kind of a visual metaphor for the entire universe in space. And then also these teachings and relationships that we have, teachers and relationships we have, are a metaphor for the awakening through time. So there's two types of transmission involved in holding a mountain seat ceremony. We think of a mountain seat ceremony as an event, but it's actually a transmission. It's a transmission of entrustment to a teacher. And it's a transmission of entrustment of a Sangha to each and every person in it, whether they're in person or online. Everything is changed and everybody becomes new when Tejo becomes new Tejo. Okay, so she's the name for the new abbot is similar to for the name for someone with Dharma transmission. When you receive Dharma transmission acknowledgement by your teacher, you're called new Tejo or new Gigen. Gigen's the name I'm known by in Japan. And when you have a mountain seat ceremony in a Sangha, the teacher receives the title of new life, new blood, new life. And the teacher may have been the teacher there for a long time, but the act of Dharma transmission gives new life to not only that person, but to everybody they come in contact with, and everybody influenced by Great Tree. So one of the influences of Great Tree is in equity. It's with the practice of equity. So Great Tree was established as a women's temple. And everybody practicing at Great Tree doesn't have to be a woman. For Great Tree being established as a woman's temple to refresh our attitude towards the anima in ourselves. So we can join the circle of women practitioners and teachers, or we can honor the circle of women practitioners and teachers. That's what I mean by influence, is that because Great Tree exists, women practitioners and teachers are honored. I don't know if you know this, but starting with the time of Mahapajapati, women's teaching was politically suppressed. First of all, it wasn't even authorized at all. Women couldn't become ordained in Buddha Sangha for a very long time. And then Mahapajapati walked, Buddha's foster mom, his aunt, walked for a long, long way with hundreds of followers barefoot in the dust to ask the Buddha for ordination. And when she got to him with all the followers standing there waiting patiently, she said, Lord, we are this many women with this desire to be ordained in your way. Would you please ordain us? And they asked 3 times. And each time the Buddha said no. And then Mahapajapati tried a backdoor approach. She went to speak with Ananda, who was the Buddha's so-called slowest disciple, but also happened to be the one who Buddha had trusted to teach how to make a new robe that identified Buddhists. So this is a small version of that robe. So Ananda was quite trusted, even though his enlightenment wasn't acknowledged till late. And when Mahapajapati asked him, Ananda promised that he would go and ask the Buddha whether women could be ordained. And he did, and the Buddha said, no, absolutely not. And Ananda said, why not? Don't they have the same capacity for awakening that men do? And the Buddha said, absolutely, they do. Ananda said, well, could you please ordain them? The Buddha said, I don't think I can. And Ananda said, well, really, why not? The Buddha said, well, if we ordain women, the Dharma will last for 500 years less. Anyway, Ananda convinced the Buddha. There's a ceremony of gratitude to Ananda that's done in women's monastery in Japan to celebrate this. That women's monastery is very close to us in spirit because people who practice there, one of the main people who practice there, Shohaku Okamura, practiced with this woman abbot. And his first translation project was to translate the robe instructions that we use for sewing Buddha's robe. So the ordination of women, required 8 special rules, and it just went on that way year after year after year. So there's a wonderful story about Mahapajapati, her death poem, which you can read about in a book by Donald Lopez on Buddhist practice. And the introduction to that book talks about how the cult of Mahapajapati, the cult of women, the transmission of women, was blocked, sometimes by hurting or killing the participants, so that the contributions of women were not continually known. Anyway, I just wanted to say that even in Japan, where there were nuns able to be ordained, the female training centers weren't funded for food until the 1970s. So women had to arrange flowers and teach tea to get money for food. And many of the women practitioners, including one who's old and in America right now in memory care, suffered from malnutrition and extreme illnesses because women weren't acknowledged. So for Tejo to start a women's temple where anyone can practice and acknowledge the female side of practice is a great advance in Buddhist practice, and perhaps one of the main ways in which this inclusivity is one of the main ways in which we can contribute, the United States of America and affiliated members can contribute to Buddhism as a whole. I wanted to say that in the 1990s, women, including Linda Ruth, Blanche, and Shinshu and Jaku and Tejo and Josho and a number of female teachers, Chosen, Myo-an, a number of teachers who Tejo and I know quite well, looked through all the names of the women practitioners who had received transmission and developed a circle of women teacher friends down through the ages and started honoring them and insisting that our sanghas honor them. And in 2016, when I gave transmission, I finished the transmission of Zanju Earthland Manual and gave transmission to Konen Cardenas, who's now going by the name Dhammadippa. So I invited 30 women teachers to stand in a circle and and welcome the new female teachers. So Teijo's work, and it was a ceremony that women are now doing as part of Dharma transmission, and a new document that they're doing. And Teijo's support and the existence of your place supports that work. It wouldn't happen if there weren't support for it. So the mountain seat ceremony is a place where the Sangha begins to collect its understanding of somebody's Dharma contribution and entrust or authorize them to lead them kind of from the bottom of their hearts as a group. And you know that old saying, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. So you can see, each student can see Teijo, once a week for the rest of your life. But the whole Sangha inviting Teijo to be new life for the Sangha changes the relationship forever. It increases the level of trust that can exist between teacher and student, and acknowledges your practice place as a treasure store that's shared by the entire Sangha, that everybody wants to take responsibility for and find the best possible person to guide some of the basic ways in which your life can be right for you. Our life can be right for us when we sit zazen and follow the precepts, not as rules, not like I have to go to the Zendo, not as I must not take life so I can't kill this mosquito that I know has, dengue fever. It's bringing dengue fever. They're not meant to be followed like rules like that. They're meant to be, Zazen is meant to be a place where we can get to know ourselves from the cell of our body all the way to the great universe. And precepts are meant to be specific ways we can get to know ourselves and the great universe in its function. In Zazen, we can observe the function, but in precept practice, we get to realize the function as part of daily life. And we don't understand exactly now. I think there's work to be done on this. But temples and monasteries are designed to be pure lands. So all the roles that people have in temples are designed to work together in very specific ways as part of the, the D&D manual of how to run a treasure store of Dharma. When I was studying I have a joint degree in architecture and urban planning. And when I was studying for it, I took a computer simulation course called Axis, which was developed by the government in the 1960s. So what we did was we had we had programmed into our computer various random natural events, economic events, and political events. And so we had a base line of that running, week by week, month by month, year by year. And then we had a manual for each of many, many different roles. So while I was taking that class, I got to be a newspaper reporter, a politician, a developer, a concerned parent, and a number of other things. So there were manuals for these roles. It gave us ways to approach the task of running a town. And we drove that town into the ground and killed it off in many, many different ways. So we could see how towns are vulnerable to things like public opinion, administrative fiat, protests, and so on. So that was part of my education for architecture and urban planning. And so we have this education manual for the roles of a temple or a monastery called the Shingi. So we have the Zenin Shingi, the Eihei Shingi, and other Shingis, which are manuals for the different roles, plus inspirational writings about the roles. And we usually take these as rules, but actually they set up roles as part of a process that continues through the life of an abbacy and even before and after. So each role is meant to contribute to the whole in specific ways, to not to run it into the ground, but to create new life periodically and to develop that place as a pure land for everybody's encouragement. And when you do a ceremony like the mountain seat ceremony, you take those roles and you stand for those roles. And you are the inviters and also the enactors, like the Tenzo still cooks. You know, the guest manager still manages the guests, but they do it with a specific point. Like there's one point in the mountain seat ceremony is ceremonial and it's administrative. So there's one point in the mountain seat ceremony in which the president and the new abbot stand face to face. And this is usually done behind closed doors, but in smaller mountain seat ceremonies, I set it up in the same room, but just in a corner of the room so that the whole, Sangha doesn't have to wait while everybody goes to a different room to do this. So in this part of the ceremony, the president or director formally invites the new abbot to be abbot. And they get a document which is written, particular things are written, and they also get the temple seal. And it's an administrative entrustment. So we always think of this as the abbot's ceremony, but it's actually the president's ceremony. The president is the one doing the inviting on behalf of the Sangha. And that's a real responsibility. You actually have to trust the president to hand over the temple seal to the new abbot. And when that's done properly, the abbot receives that responsibility. It's a contractual responsibility with the contract that's given. And it's manifested in a temple seal for documents. And so that's an example of how it's a basic example of how the role that's managed during the ceremony isn't just a thing to do, a dusty old thing to do. It actually gives new life to the president to invite the abbot to be abbot and take that responsibility. Another part of the mountain seat ceremony at the very beginning is where there is a group called the Ryoban, and the Ryoban means it's like a group of everybody, a group of many people. And the Ryo is the people who run the temple, the people in named roles like the Ino, the Shika, and so on, the director, and so on. Those people, and on one side, and then the practice leadership on the other, the Tanto, and various teachers from the wider Sangha. And that group of people joins, first of all, to kind of host a tea for visiting teachers, so that the new abbot is welcomed into the ranks of the teachers who have responsibilities for temples. And then also that person, that new life is led into the main practice hall of the temple by the people who actually do the work of supporting the abbot. Isn't that interesting? Led in, kind of showed around, invited. And of course, the form of the ceremony, is one in which it hints that the person has come from someplace else. But the someplace else can just be the past into the future. And then is this administrative ceremony. And then there's another ceremony, another part of the ceremony in which the teacher is actually invited to ascend the mountain seat. And the whole Sangha honors the seat that the teacher's invited to ascend. Then the teacher ascends it, and then the teacher gets to do a ceremony of question and answer to show the community their understanding. Okay, so that's the main form of the ceremony. And there's a lot of congratulations and you split. So that's a part of the ceremony you see or know about. But there's part of the ceremony you don't see and you don't know about. So do you know how in the morning for Zazen, the teacher goes around to the different altars, the person who's leading the meditation goes around to the different altars and offers incense at each altar. And then does what's called a jundo or circle around the room, which is kind of a morning greeting. In the Dharma transmission ceremony, as part of the ceremony, the teacher has to write statements for each one of those altars, and also for their own teachers, for world peace, the Sangha, and so on. And those are given at different times. So during the procession at the beginning of the ceremony, the teacher is stopping at each altar and saying their Dharma understanding of why that altar exists. And during the ceremony, there's a moment in which the teacher has to take out many different statements acknowledging different relationships within the Sangha. So acknowledging the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas by acknowledging their altar and acknowledging the relationships that brought this person and this ceremony into being is written into the ceremony. And they're kind of semi-private in that the teacher may or may not have their statements kind of broadcast to the whole group. Some of the statements are in the room and you can hear them, but know that whether they're broadcast or not, whether the mic works or not, know that those are happening. So the entire how this place came to be and this person came to be is acknowledged in the ceremony. All the support of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the authority of the Sangha, the relationships of the Sangha are all part of the ceremony. So if that's not developmental, what is? Of course, there's many other ways in which Tejo has been a pioneer in Sangha life. And what I want you to do as part of being a Sangha, this is my request, my heartfelt request. Find out about Tejo's life and practice. Thoroughly check her out. Find out about her teaching relationships, both in the past, who are her Dharma relations, and also in the present, who is Soto Zen North America, for instance, where she's become part of the denominational council. Who are the people she trained with in Japan? What do they mean to her? Ask her about that so that you know who you're inviting to be your teacher. And when those statements come, they'll mean something to you that you know about and can see in a new way. Make sure that, of course, part of any ceremony that I do, like whenever I give someone the precepts, whenever I ordain them, whenever I give Dharma transmission, whenever I'm part of an inviting group for a new teacher. I do this. Tejo, block your ears. Okay. So I try to find out whether there's any karmic debts in the person's life, to me or anyone else. And I strongly advocate for those karmic debts to be completely resolved. Anything that's undone, anything that the person has promised but hasn't done, anything left over for me. I see that as part of the training for this new position, as if the person was preparing for death because they're actually preparing for a new life. This is the Sangha's responsibility as well as the teacher's responsibility. And by joining in, you acknowledge that your teacher is a human being. And before ascending and even while practicing this kind of new exalted position you're giving, the main reason that works is because you're all equal. You're all spiritual friends. So good spiritual friendship is horizontal transmission. Inviting someone to be abbot is vertical transmission. What you're doing in the temple is enacting this. Your temple as a treasure store for your community, for Soto Zen in North America, for American Zen, and for all beings. So I think it's time for a discussion. We really need to discuss this because I just like glommed this entire huge responsibility onto you to do this. And, and, this is me talking. You might disagree with me. So you need to have your own understanding of this, your own opinions about it, and design and build the perfect ceremony for you. Okay. So thanks for your attention. Let's play. This is why I'm wearing a rakusu and not a teaching case. Okay. This part of the proceedings.
Well, I appreciate your perspective on trying to familiarize yourself with the relationships that Tejo has formed throughout the years in her training, and like what we're inviting to our actual ceremony as the Sangha, because I feel like it could be overwhelming to think about all the planning, and it could also be hard to construct like a coherent narrative around your training because we hear a lot of things and it could just be hard to keep track of them all and file them away orderly. But I think that would really amplify the level of connection we would have with the entire experience, like knowing exactly who's coming or who's not coming, and just the important relationship that got us here, whether they're present or not. But anyway, I appreciated that perspective.
Thanks. And I want to say that for the technical details, there's so many of us who have been through this. Like I've, administered or been part of these ceremonies many, many times because we do this like every 3 or 4 years at San Francisco Zen Center. And I've been president, I've been, on the staff, I've been on the Ryoban, but I'm not the only one. Tato's got a lot of friends, so her friends really have a lot of experience with all the details of this and can kind of make the administrative details and the procedural details a lot more understandable than they are now. Okay, so thanks. I'm glad you like that part about the relationships, that finding out about who the person is in relation to you, and also who you are in relation to all of those people who have been part of her life for so long and so deep. Thank you. Thanks for this comment.
Hi, thank you so much. And I do have a
Yes,
question. I
yeah.
couldn't quite hear what you said. Um, the teacher needs to settle karmic debts before the ceremony?
Well, we need the teacher. What I was talking about, what I do as part of any ordination, and a mountain seat ceremony is an ordination. So this is my own standard, and you have to find out whether Tejo agrees. So, like when for instance, when I give the precepts to someone, when I give Jukai, I ask them what are their karmic debts. And it's not maybe not in so many words, but there's been people who have paid off old financial debts. There was somebody who forgave the brother he hadn't spoken to for 10 years. There was somebody else who had had a bad divorce, who tried to understand what their life with that person was in a new way. So those are just everyday kinds of karmic debts. But as a teacher, let's say one of my karmic debts is that there's somebody who sees things about me as a priest and a teacher that I don't want to hear, that are very difficult for me to hear. So if I'm thinking about my own practice, I have to actually hear those things in a way that they know, and I know that they have been completely heard. And then I have to discern what to do about that. So pretty much for any ordination, I like to start fresh. Like I like to know what my karmic debts are and at least be on a payment plan. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That's a good question.
Yeah, boy, do I have some debts.
Well, payment plans are a very good idea. Debt repayments. So like, for instance, you know, my mother was a Holocaust survivor, and she had Holocaust reparation money came from the country that had stolen the family house and forced her emigration. And so I wouldn't have existed if my mother's brother, Avigdor, hadn't given his entire escape money so that she could take the Kindertransport from Vienna and end up in England as a refugee. So I wouldn't exist. So when I found out about Avigdor's life and what he had done for my mother, I realized I had a huge karmic debt. So I started asking people, at least in print, to use Victoria instead of Vicky, to acknowledge his contribution to my life, because the name Avigdor is the source of my name, Victoria, my English name. And I also decided that I was going to keep Victoria as part of my Dharma name, that I wasn't going to discard Victoria, but I was going to keep using it. When a lot of the time before I had gone by Shosan, I resumed using Victoria and introducing myself that way. So that's an example of a karmic debt that it didn't take much to pay, but it's made a huge difference to me to actually acknowledge Avigdor's contribution to my being born. So that's an example of what I mean by paying a karmic debt. They may not even be alive or interested. Like, I'm sure I have karmic debts to my ex-husband, right? They may not be interested. Who knows, right? But we open our hearts and minds as part of these ceremonies, if we stand on our status or the status we're about to achieve, we can't do this. And also, you know, let's say when I became Tanto at Tassajara, I realized how nervous I was to do it. The Tanto, the head of practice there, I was really nervous. Like I had driving there, I had to keep every 10 miles getting off the highway and going someplace and, you know, taking a breather and having a cup of coffee and kind of sitting there going like this, right? And then, you know, I realized halfway to Tassajara, oh no, I'm scared. I am so scared to do this. And so I had to stop by the side of the road and say, okay, self, why are you scared? What are you scared of? And hear the human part of myself being scared. Of course, I could be Tanto. I was quite qualified. But if I hadn't stopped, I wouldn't have realized that I was scared that I was going to go to the mountains and be in this mountainous setting that's hard to get in and out of with, you know, 40 or 60 of my closest friends, and that I could ruin our time there with things that I did or said. And so I stopped off at a bookstore and got a book called People Skills, which I studied the whole time I was Tanto. And the way that book starts is by talking about 12 ways that people shoot themselves in the foot when they try to communicate. And so I started studying peaceful communication, nonviolent communication. And another feature of that book is it brings in parent effectiveness training. So I started studying all those things, right? Use of power and all those things to help me with previous karmic debts that I had accumulated through how I approached authority, and also by staving off more karmic debts as I entered to be Tanto. So this is an example of how this philosophy works in real life. So with the payment of that karmic debt towards previous violent speech or action, I could freshly enter the role of Tanto and allow myself to be human in that role, as well as an authority in that role. Both of those have to exist side by side and face to face for the role to mean anything to the people who are in the community. So that's why I emphasize karmic debts. It's not to be negative, that we're all human. So thanks for that question. I don't want to go on and on, but there you go.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks.
I think our time is just about up.
Okay.
And I want to say thank you so much. Really, really a nice, nice talk about this. We'll have you on our website, your recording.
Okay, I'll ask that there be one little piece of the recording that I need to have taken out. Okay, so I'll be in touch about that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so actually you can take this little request out too, but the part to take out is the conversation about Benshi, because he's still in danger from his family.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the part about that part taken out, but you can tell your Sangha members about it. So I want to thank you for inviting me. I feel so honored. And please, if there's anything I can do to support you, Sangha and Tejo, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So now we'll give back the merit. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Big hug. See you later.